It's time to get sexy, so watch Secular Sexuality Live Thursdays at 7 p.m. Central. Visit tiny.cc/YTSS and call into the show at 512-991-9242 or connect to the show online at tiny.cc/callsex.
Good afternoon, YouTubes, and welcome back to another episode of The Nonprofits, the show where we discuss news and topics of the day from a skeptical humanist perspective. My name is Jason Sherood, and we have a fantastic panel of hosts today. I'm going to start to my immediate left there with Pseudonymousaurus Rex, someone who has a name so much of a fuss to pronounce that we call him just Rex.
Hi, Jason. Thanks for having me back. This is my second time on the show, so I guess the first time went well enough to get invited back. I'm happy to be here and hope for another good show. Thanks.
Absolutely, and thank you for coming back. Next to him, we've got someone who is not bad. He is just drawn that way. Ateo.
Hello, sir. Look at this. Oh, come on. I cannot do it. Yes, I forget it. May the force be with you. Nice to be here, Jason.
Nice to have you back. And last but not least, we've got Kelley Laughlin, who had just escaped the rock.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's fun to be back. It's good to see you again, Rex, too.
Thanks, Kelley. You too.
Okay, so this show is a product of the Atheist Community of Austin, which is a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to the separation of religion and government and promoting positive atheism. So today, we've got 4 really great segments to talk about. We're going to start off actually with a step in the right direction where you no longer need to climb the steps. For our second segment, we are going to pray the brain away. No, we're not actually going to lose our minds. This is actually more about the barriers to mental health. For segment 3, we take a look at India and see how Hinduism is pretty much taking over the state. And for our final segment, we got a little evolution now with more science. So as with all of our shows, links to today's topics and the news that we discuss are available in the description below. And a reminder that you can come into the show prepared. You can check out the Nonprofits Facebook fan page every Friday night where I list the articles ahead of time so that you never miss a beat. So let's go ahead and get right into it. For our first segment, we're going to do a step in the right direction. And Cynthia, wait. Oh, crap. Cynthia's not here. All right. You know what? As Thanos once said, I'll do it myself. So we're going to step in the right direction. Step in the right direction, baby. Step in the right direction. Oh, we're step in the right direction. Yeah.
It was lovely.
You did better than I could have, honestly.
Thank you. And Kelley, I think you wanted to go ahead and lead us off on this one.
Yeah, sure. This is from a Freedom from Religion Foundation bulletin. And the state of New York has now required their criminal justice system to require secular options for people to go through rehabilitation for alcohol abuse and drug abuse. And so they can only have to go through the 12-step thing anymore or through religious programs, or are required to, because that was pretty much the only options they had with a lot of the people that were locked up in prison or were required to go for probation. Now, my father was involved with AA for like over 50 years. He basically ran his local chapter. He actually almost built the building by himself. My dad was not a man of God in any way whatsoever. And his higher power, I asked him what his higher power was once, and I honestly cannot say it on the air. But he was still kind of brainwashed into the 12 steps system, because when he was younger, it totally worked for him. And he did it more in a non-religious way, though, because, again, he wasn't a religious person. But he never tried to deconvert anybody else. He never worried about what their religious beliefs were. And he mentored people for, like I said, over 50 years. I know AA is really secretive about the success rate of their programs, and it's been estimated to be between 5 and 10%. To me, that's not very good. Like using the Sinclair method with the drug naltrexone, they say is an 83% success rate. That's way better. And with treatments like that, or the availability of treatments like that, I think the New York justice system will be in a better position to help a lot more people. There's other secular groups that operate sort of similar to AA that are based on the same methods, just without the spiritual aspects. And I have been trying to find data on the success rates of those, and I just couldn't find it, unfortunately. So anybody else want to weigh in on that?
Let's move over to you, Rex.
Yeah, so I guess I can follow up to Kelly's point fairly well, because I also attended group meetings, not personally, not that there's anything wrong with that, but just as a supporting influence for somebody in my life. And the groups, when I went there, they always emphasized the language about God in a way that tried to soften it. So if I quote directly from the Al-Anon 12-step program, believe it's the third step, really makes mention of God as we understood him. And they use a capital H on the him. And that's really telling, because though the sentence says, as we understood, it really undermines its own message, because it refers to him with a capitalization, which is a clear allusion to a deity. I always had difficulty even sitting in the meetings because of this language. But of course, I kept my mouth shut just in order to be a supporting influence for the individual who'd asked me to attend. Now, though they tell you that you're free to understand God in whatever capacity you like, the loaded language is really designed to push vulnerable people to credit their sobriety to some sort of divine intervention. We know that religions have always preyed upon vulnerable people. I've got countless stories of people who are converting to one religion or another after some traumatic event in their life. And these meetings are the perfect recruitment opportunity for religions. So I just want to applaud New York for making secular options available. But I must confess that I'm not aware of any other programs, any secular programs. So I don't know if anybody here is aware of any, but maybe we could just throw out a quick plug for an organization in case we have any listeners or viewers who are struggling with addiction and wish to have an organization that is secular in nature.
So as far as that's concerned, the ACA has looked into a couple of potential organizations, but none that we really are willing to fully endorse. I would say that, definitely going to Recovering from Religion and checking out the Secular Therapy Project is definitely a great start on your journey to sobriety if you are definitely needing it. And I got to actually take a look at these steps. Not being an alcoholic myself, I actually even stopped drinking, a few years back, just because, well, partly I didn't like it, and partly because there is definitely alcoholism in my family. I'm like, okay, I don't want to take the risk. I'm just not going to. But I finally got to take a look at what these 12 steps are, because it's always about the 12 steps. And just like you said, Rex, there's a lot of very loaded language, a lot of, and you don't even get to God, like you said, until the third step. But if I had the time, I would totally George Carlin this, where you combine some things, rearrange other things, and maybe come up with, 2 or 3 steps. that would make this a whole lot easier. You really just don't need all the BS. But Teo, what do you think?
Oof, here is the guy obsessed with the harms of religion. And I have been talking about this issue recently. And we were talking about how awful it is that religion, it's kind of a mafia, a syndicate that has been taking over all things that are supposed to be there to help people, and they are turning into a kind of weapon to get more members. That's the reason why in every single jail you find a church inside, because they want more members. And this thing of the AA is more of the same. They try to indoctrinate you. And we were actually discussing something that happened in an AA meeting. There was a guy who was an atheist. So when they got to the step that you mentioned, he said, "Hey, but I don't believe in a God because of reasons. So I cannot give my faith to something I don't believe in." And the answer he got was, "Then there is no hope for you. We cannot help you." And as you mentioned, I think, yeah, Kelley mentioned it in the beginning, there are not many results about AA. They say, "Oh no, 100% of people who complete our steps, they make it because of whatever." And actually, if you complete the the program, and you go back to drinking, they say that you didn't finish it, you didn't do it right, so it's not their fault, it's your fault. And yeah, all the ones that actually complete it and become part of any church that is holding this, oh, they are new members and they completed it, and they are the 100% of people who take our program in AA. So this is another way of how religion harms our society and how it takes away something that it should be secular. I'm with Rex here uploading New York for the, oh, I have the number. The bill is A8163 S7313. And yeah, the idea here is to expand treatment options for New Yorkers in the criminal justice system, giving them the secular options instead of only providing with religious ones. So I know that we have a lot to talk about, and I want to applaud New York and the FF Freedom from Religion institution that has been pushing for this, and that they finally made it. There is some hope in here, and I'm happy to read that.
The nice thing about this is that it also opens the floodgates for other areas to adopt similar laws, similar ideas, similar practices. So, we're like, okay, we're going to applaud New York. And absolutely, this is definitely, as you heard earlier, a step in the right direction. To see that then filter through some, of the other states. And yeah, you will probably start seeing it through more secular minded states or what have you, but it's still that's something that could filter through all the different states, because it is, regardless of the numbers. And no, AA's numbers do not look good. I believe I saw that at the worst they're about 5%, at the best they're up to 18% of a success rate. That's not really all that good. And yeah, if they can lie and cheat and steal about the numbers, there really should be some kind of investigation into that.
Well, Jason, can I jump in here real quick?
Absolutely.
I just want to say that, though we may have issues with the steps themselves or the language in the steps, I don't want to berate the program itself too hard, because I don't think that it's necessarily a bad thing to have some sort of step process for individuals struggling with addiction, and also having a community of like-minded people, right? Remember, this is why religion attracts so many people, is because they have a community gathering, regularly scheduled meetings, and that community is what holds a lot of these religions together, right? So I don't want to say that these meetings are necessarily a bad thing, but maybe some of the steps are not great. I know that we talked in the notes about this idea of confronting others who you may have harmed or have done you harm, may not be the best approach, right? So some of their steps may not be the best advice, but this idea of allowing addicts or alcoholics to gather and have regularly scheduled meetings, I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing. And not to mention, this is free and easily available. So if this works for 5 to 15% of people, that's not bad, right? If all they have to do is attend a meeting once a week.
It's not, I wouldn't, again, it's not, I would say that their success rate is bad and that there needs to be more options is what we're seeing here.
Of course. Yeah,
and there needs to be science-based.
An exclusive treatment. Like this is the only thing you do. It should be part of a more holistic approach. But I just want to say that,
absolutely,
personally, I don't think that we should be getting rid of the program altogether.
Oh, no. Don't think what I'm saying here is mean that we need to get rid of the program. Okay. That would be like saying we need to get rid of religion. It would be nice, but it does provide community for some people. Right. And I even, when I went through all the 12 steps and I put my little commentary on each and every last one of them, in that vein of trying to get this into a George Carlin kind of situation, there were some things, where you're trying to push mindfulness, where you need to know yourself, know your mind, know your situation. Absolutely. You should definitely do that. And that's what I'm saying is like, wherever you see a bit of language that is trying to knock you down and push the power onto somebody else, that's where you can retool it and make it more science-based and make it work for not just that 5 to 18% of the people, but for the rest of the people where it is needed. Kelley, you've been sitting there for a while. What else do you want to add to this?
I've been sitting here just being quiet because you've all been making such wonderful points. I'm just sitting, and I was thinking about my dad. I'll be honest with you. I was being a little nostalgic and thinking about my dad. And when he passed away, they had a memorial service for him in the Alano Club. And I know that AA doesn't have a good success rate, but there was literally a 4-hour line of people that came by and talked about how my dad had changed their lives. And I had no idea how many people he had touched. And it was really amazing. And he did it, again, like I said, without being a religious man. I don't think he did the 12 steps, but he definitely stepped with people and he definitely mentored them. I went fishing with a lot of different guys, and that was part of what he would do. He would take people and get them involved in other things, so I think you're right, Rex. You need a more holistic approach, and you got to try to improve people's lives, right?
Yeah, I guess I'm going to take what Rex is saying in here because I agree with the idea that, hey, we don't have to get rid of this. I think that they help, but what both of you, Jason and Rex, mentioned is that what is helping is the community. It's not the belief in a God, it's not the religious part, it's the community. Mm-hmm. So imagine that you are a person who went through a lot of effort to leave their religion, and sadly, because of many reasons, either depression or whatever, ends up being alcoholic, and then you have to go to a group where they are trying to force you back into that kind of jail that you had to live on your own. Wouldn't it be nice to have a nice community of people who are not telling you, oh, the only way how you can go, how you can leave this addiction is replacing your alcohol addiction for this belief addiction, for this God addiction? So I think that's what we're trying to push in here, or at least is what I would like to have. Communities where people can experience this community. Experience, having people around you and not being forced into a belief. And that would be amazing, because that is the only problem with Alcoholics Anonymous, AA, because they are trying to force you into their own religion. Take that away, remove religion from there, and you have a nice community helping people with awesome people as Kelley's father, and you are going to have very, very good results. Just don't push your religion into it, and that's it. That is going to be perfect, according to me.
Yeah, just not another form of indoctrination. We have plenty of that.
Real quick, I just want to mention this did come off of a Freedom from Religion Foundation bulletin. And if you got a few extra dollars, you should definitely donate them to the nonprofits. But if you got like 1 or 2 left over after that, give it to the FFRF. So,
absolutely, they are definitely a great organization that we've gotten a lot of news from them. So they're almost like a fifth member of the nonprofits here. Okay, so I think that's actually a good jumping off point where we can go into our next segment. But before we do that, I want to take a moment to thank both of our veteran viewers and our new viewers for getting us over the 11,000 subscriber mark. Once we got over 10,000 subscribers, we were able to do fundraisers, and 100% of those proceeds go directly to help the ACA. Google doesn't take a cut of that in any way, shape, or form. But once you are subscribed, you should definitely click that like button, ring that bell, so you always know when a new Nonprofits episodes premieres, which of course is Sundays at 3 p.m. Central. But I think everybody here already knew that, right? And make sure you share. You didn't know that?
No, I did.
Oh, okay. Well, I was scared there for a second. Like, wait, you've been on here for quite a while. Then share the link of our channel to your friends, your family members, co-workers, that neighbor guy that you really don't like, anyone and everyone. I actually have talked to my co-workers about some of the things that I do here because I'm in a liberal bastion where I can get away with that. So let's get the word out of there so that we can continue helping those fundraisers. And are you aware that the atheist community of Austin has another YouTube channel? You should be. Check out the Atheist Experience Network, a channel where you can find all the ACA shows in podcast form. You can subscribe at tiny.cc/AEN podcast to listen to episodes of the Nonprofits. Hey, that's us. The Atheist Experience, Secular Sexuality, and all the other ACA shows, so you never, ever, ever miss a single episode. All right, so on to our next segment, and I think I'm going to go ahead and take this one. We are talking about the religious barriers to mental health care. And while we started the show in a step in the right direction, unfortunately, we still live in reality. And it's a situation like this where I really kind of did wish we had Christy with us, because this is really kind of his domain. But what this article was about, and it's from the American Journal of Psychiatry by Emmy Rabi Aviksi. Oh boy, I totally butchered that name. April 19th, 2017. So it's a little bit of an older article, older study, really. And I can actually kind of understand why religious people are hesitant to talk to professionals. I have, over the years, talked to some professionals. I don't talk to one right now. Not that I'm perfect, mentally health-wise. Far from it, I would say. But I would say that, I did have some experience talking with professionals in the past. And a few years ago, I felt like I needed to go back to that. And I was looking for not only professionals who were secular, because we got the Secular Therapy Project, but that would also take my insurance. That was another big one. And a lot of the people that I personally was looking for, their views didn't line up with mine enough to where I thought that they could help me. So if you take that to a Abrahamic believing person, you take that to an Eastern religion believing person, and they're talking to somebody who doesn't believe the same thing that you do, even if they try to do a completely secular and science-based approach, you might not be on the same level. So what they'll do is they'll first pray it away. Like, no, God's going to save me. God's going to fix my depression. God's going to make me happy. And then when that doesn't work, they'll go off to their religious leader. And when that doesn't work, it just kind of snowballs from there. So again, it's like one of those things. I can understand why the hesitancy is there. And, this article doesn't really make any inroads into how to fix the issue, just more of to explain what it is and why it's there. But who would like to step up next?
Oh, well, weren't we just talking about how religion harms our society and creates problems for us? Yeah, apparently we keep on the same track. And I have actually had this argument with people before. And let me quote from the article. People with persistent psychiatric disorders could rely on their religion beliefs to cope with their condition. This is what Jason mentioned. I'm not going to go with the psychologist, I'm going to pray it away. And sadly, it's because they live in an environment which tells them that, because you are supposed to put your trust in God as a believer instead of helping instead of searching for this type of help. I would pray. I remember that. And I totally understand people that when they feel bad, they start praying to God. And it kind of works because it gives you this placebo effect that there is somebody listening to you. And sometimes you just need to talk with people. But here we're not talking about psychology, we're talking about psychiatry, when we have the terrible disorders that need a treatment. And sadly, a lot of people, they don't trust professionals for many reasons. For example, let me quote another thing here. It's believed that psychiatric disorders, and this is amongst religious people, are caused by weakness in faith, and that the illness can be overcome or cured through willpower alone, rather than by seeking professional help from the mental health system. And there is some extra stuff about the belief, but I want to talk about that later. But in here, I want to mention that sadly, people with terrible problems have this harming idea, according to me. Maybe I'm wrong, but I see it as a harm because they have the idea that God will help me. This is just God giving the worst fight to the best warriors. And I'm one of those warriors, so I'm miserable because God is testing me. And for me, that is very harmful for people.
Absolutely. I definitely agree that it's harmful.
I agree there. It's certainly harmful. But one of the things that I see is a little bit more of this religious persecution complex, this, woe is me. Because many people struggle with the concept of requiring mental help. It's an admission that there's something wrong, and that the individual themselves does not have the power or the tools within to deal with the issue or trauma. And that's really humbling admission for a person to make. Religious individuals are not special. They're not the only ones who struggle with seeking out care. Doctors should be and generally are only interested in the health outcomes of their patients, right? Nothing else. The religion interfering with the individual's access to the care is an example of the need to get rid of religion, not reforming the system to make that initial point of contact less intimidating, right? I found it interesting in this review. There's a quote that said, psychiatrists may have difficulty separating normal and pathological expressions of religiosity. So not only are these patients suffering some sort of mental illness or trauma when they come to speak with their therapist, but the therapist has difficulty separating their mental affliction from their religiosity. And the religiosity itself could be construed as a separate affliction. So yeah, I don't want to minimize the plight of these individuals, but just that it's no harder for you to try to contact a mental health professional than it is for anybody else. And generally, I would think that provided your mental health practitioner is not practicing a religious-based approach, they're practicing a science-based approach, they don't care about your religion. It's not relevant, right? So yeah, Kelley, do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, actually quite a few. One of the things that scares me is people like Greg Locke, who, says if you have mental illness, you're possessed by demons, right? I had a friend many years ago, another geologist guy, and his mother had some mental difficulties, and she started going to a new church. They told her that she wasn't having mental difficulties. She was being possessed by demons. They were coming over to her house, doing prayer circles around her 3-4 times a week, talked her into getting off of her meds. And 3 months later, she had to be institutionalized. She just totally lost it. And I see, I saw that happen. And I really worry that things like that are going to happen to other people. And that there was that case, this is kind of weird, but that case in Ireland around the turn of the century where the guy thought his wife had been taken away by a fairy, basically that she was possessed, and they tortured her to death. And I worry about that kind of physical abuse as well, with some radical the church thinking, like I say, sort of along the lines of Greg Locke. That really worries me a lot. And we would never know, because that person wouldn't go to the doctor, because it was God's will, right?
And we've seen it in more modern religions like Scientology, where thetans are supposed to be grabbing onto your soul, and so you grab your 2 tin cans of the e-meter and try to figure out why if you have too many of these things and it's bad for you. And so then you have to buy more stuff in order to get you to the next level. I don't know. Scientology is really confusing to me. What do you think, Teo?
Oh, well, I am still thinking about what Kelly said about exorcisms. Recently, I was talking about a father who killed his 4-year-old boy with hot water in an exorcism. He made him drink boiling water and killed the poor guy. And I have been thinking about all the many times that all these psychiatric disorders have been treated as demonic possessions instead of what they are. And it's scary how many people may have died for treatable mental issues. Well, maybe back then they didn't know about that, but nowadays we do understand them. And I find it extremely dangerous when there are people, and preachers especially, saying, no, there are no mental disorders. Everything is possession, demonic possession, and give us money and we will remove the demon from you. That is dangerous. That is awful. Sorry, Jason?
Yeah, the woman who drowned her kids because she wanted to make sure that they were clean and, got to go to heaven.
I was just going to mention that.
Yeah, and we have seen on all the shows that the ACA produce where an atheist will call in and say, religion is a mental disorder. And that is so far from the truth. Now, do people who have religious ideology, can they have a mental disorder at the same time? Yes. So can an atheist. That has nothing to do with that. And because there is that stigma, because there's, you're talking to somebody who's not there, you must be schizophrenic automatically. No. First off, learn what schizophrenia is, then make your decision. Don't just make these blanket statements, because they are so, not only are they wrong, but they can be incredibly harmful if not used properly.
You took what I was going to say, and that is perfect because I can add on to that. Because recently I made an episode about people don't call people with religion, or don't call religion a mental illness, because it's weaponizing this, and it's insulting for people with mental problems. And I'm going to explain why. I know it sounds like a joke, but it's true. You are trying, or people, when they say, as Jason said, you talk to God, you have a schizophrenia, you are weaponizing schizophrenia, you're weaponizing mental problems, and you are creating a stigma against it. And mental problems are just another problem. Recently, I had an accident with my foot. I need to rest a little bit. I had to wear some bandages, and now I'm better. I know people who need insulin because they have
Diabetes.
Thank you, guys. How can I forget that such a simple name? Diabetes. And that doesn't make them a bad person or less of a person. In the same way, if you have diabetes, that is something physical that you can test and all of that. Mental problems also can be tested. Also problems that any of us can have. And maybe you have depression. Maybe you need some sertraline. Maybe you need some other type of medicine. But having those problems doesn't make you any less of a person. Having a mental problem is just like having any other type of physical disease. We need treatment, and we should seek medical help for depression. We should seek medical help, and nobody should feel attacked for searching for that. And sadly, when people say, "Oh yeah, religion is a mental disease," they are trying to give a negative view of mental problems. No, guys, we all can have those. It's totally normal. Our brains are so interesting and intricate that they can fail in many ways. So having mental problems just means that we need professional help. Nothing else doesn't make us better or worse people or anything at all.
You are not damaged. You are not weak. You just need help. And every last one of us needs a little help from time to time. So if you need that help, get it. And that's why, we definitely tout the Secular Therapy Project, because they do such great work. Definitely if you need your help, get it. Just get it.
Yeah, don't be stigmatized or feel like you're doing a negative thing. And if you want to be religious, you can still do that too. Just make sure that you're not using religion for your therapy. That's the major thing.
Absolutely. And if you're religious, you can still use secular therapy. In fact, would definitely recommend it, because there again, you're using science-based versus dusty old book.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, the church can still be a support group for you. There's not a problem with that. But you need to get good secular therapy to make yourself better. Right.
Well, and I think this goes back to that first article that we were just talking about, right? Where you should be using these tools in concert with one another.
Mm-hmm.
Use your tools, get your support network, everything you need to do to just make it a little bit easier, make yourself a little bit better. So I think that is a good stopping point for there. And let's go ahead and take a little bit of a break in our conversation. And if you didn't tune into the other ACA shows last week, here's what you might have missed.
We are reckoning with really powerful forces. I'd like to think that we can experiment and play around with our gender in a casual way, but I also want to say that these things are really fundamental to who we are as a person.
Unbroken love or something, which is not what Hitler meant by it. So if you could help me with that, that would be great.
Oh boy, this is the episode where I get to talk about Hitler. Wow.
My grandfather used to refer to clergymen in a certain way, and he's right in this case. He always used to say, "Here comes the gravy train of an easy life." And without a shadow of a doubt, this is Jesus pimping.
Do you get these kind of situations where you have like a female frog with like 6 or 7 males like stacked up? Well, I think it'd be hilarious being a female frog jumping around with like this 7th male frog orgy tower going on behind you.
If you're going to make assertions that your God is the only living God, when I ask you why you believe that your God is a living God, you don't get to say, "How do you expect me to do that?" You were supposed to show up with your A game. It's not my fault that you aren't ready to defend what you believe.
Header back goes there, some nice instruction to give yourself a big old orgasm, or better yet, give someone else one. And so when this arrived, of course, my partner needed to verify the efficacy of this pillow, for science. And so I would just like to say from the bottom of my heart, this may be the only time I can actually say this and it be accurate, but Mr. Greg James, executive producer of the Atheist Community of Austin, thank you for the job.
All right, and we are back. So, for our third segment, we're going to leave the United States for a little bit, go over to India and see how their government is going. And Rex, I think you wanted to take this one.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. So this article was published by The Atlantic on May 27th, 2022, and it was written by Yasmin Saran. And the article basically is talking about the rise of Hindu nationalism after the partition under, well, specifically, there's been a precipitous rise under Prime Minister Narendra Modi. India technically remains a secular state. There is no official state-sanctioned religion, but there has been a shift towards the Hindu religion among the majority. There's a 20% minority in the country, and that's spread mostly between 20% represents 240 million, right? India's a big country, 1.4 billion people. So this minority is largely represented by about 200 million Muslims and another 28 million Christians. The rest would be some other smaller religions. And these minority classes are suffering violence at the hands of other individuals, and they're actually suffering some state-sanctioned retaliation from police forces for religious gatherings. Simple things like wearing the symbols, like wearing a cross, and individuals are even worried about carrying home dinner from a relative's place for fear that somebody will catch them carrying beef, because of course the cow is sacred in the Hindu religion. So that's a little gist of what the article is about. Jason, did you have any thoughts on this?
I'm seeing what's going on there, and I'm not an expert in India culture and all that, but I see what's going on there, and I'm seeing a lot of parallels to what is happening here, only going more towards the Christian end of things. And I'm just kind of wondering, okay, what's the end game? And I do think that either we're going to see what the end game is, or they're going to have a major revolution there in India. And, hopefully it'll be a bloodless one. Not many revolutions are. And we get to see, just where we can go from there. But it's really disturbing. And right now there seem to be focusing more on the Muslim population because they're the biggest of the minority. And also because, as you mentioned, Rex, the whole partition where the UK decided that they wanted to do what they do best and draw lines in the sand. Yeah. Good job, UK. Always doing a great job on that one. So yeah, it's and it doesn't matter really who they're doing it to. The fact that they're doing it to one group means that they can move on to the next. And you'll see that here. We're going against Muslims to some extent here in the U.S., but people like Greg Locke and some of those other extremist hate preachers, they hate atheists more than anything else in the world.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So, Kelley, what do you think?
Yeah, I totally see the parallels, Jason. It was one of the things that really stood out to me too. One of the things I can say is that we're not having as many isolated incidents of violence as seem to be happening over there, that like religious violence. The one big thing that we've had over here that was really driven by Christian nationalism, of course, was January 6th. But India kind of has the history of this stuff. I don't know if you know what happened during the Pakistan partition with the ghost trains. And then as I recall, back in the early 1990s, there was a mosque, the Babri Mosque, and the Hindus claimed that it was built on top of holy Hindu land. And that started a whole bunch of rioting. 1,200 people died back then. I was talking about this with my son, and he mentioned to me that he had just read an article that they're now doing the same thing with the Taj Mahal. They're saying that this Muslim mosque, as they call it, is built on top of Hindu holy land, and it needs to go. So I'm just waiting for more large-scale rioting to break out and another 1,200 people to die there, unfortunately. But you can see that this kind of behavior isn't unprecedented in India's past. They've been doing this for a while now. And I hope and pray that Christian nationalism doesn't get this violent, though we don't have 1,200 people dying because they want to tear down a synagogue or a mosque, right? So,
I mean,
yeah.
we can't just hope that they won't. We have to make sure that we hold people accountable. And for right now, the optics in this country would be absolutely devastating if something like that happened. But the way things going,
I feel like I'm being a real bummer this episode.
No,
don't worry.
I mean,
It's
these
fine.
are heavy subjects, and these are these are things that we need to watch out for. That's one of the reasons why we're here, is to make sure that we are there watching for these things. Keeping people accountable, keeping the religious and the faithful realizing that there are other people than them out there. What do you think, Teo?
I feel that Kelley is being optimistic because he's saying, oh yeah, in India it's being way worse. Oh yeah, but do you know how long this has been going on in India? It's been like 8 years. Twice as much as Donald Trump lasted on the government. And guys, I see the USA and it was going into that way. Do you remember when Donald Trump started calling the COVID the China virus? So there were mobs of angry people attacking any Asian they would see and beating them up. That was awful. That is what was happening under the Trump administration. And I see that Modi is nothing more than an Indian Donald Trump. Let me quote from the article. Beneath the country's ostensible inclusivity runs an undercurrent of Hindu nationalism that has gained strength during the 8-year rule of Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Modi, and this is the important part, is popular because of the fact that he's a bigot. Sounds familiar, guys? And here, then, this continues. He's seen as somebody who has put Muslims in their place, despite rising inflation and high unemployment, as well as the government's mishandling of the coronavirus pandemic and democratic backsliding. The Prime Minister still enjoys widespread popularity with his own BJP supporting constituency. Does it sound familiar, guys? Tell me, does it sound familiar for you?
Again, just a tad.
Just a little bit, right? And where does this come from? I want to quote this book called Hindutva. Hindutva, it comes, Hindutva, meaning Hinduness. It became kind of a symbol for Hindu nationalists. And it says, to be a Hindu means a person who sees this land from the Indus River to the sea and his country, but also as his holy land. Here we go with the religious part. And then it says at the end, talking about while Christians and Muslims could fulfill the first requirement of patriotism, they would never be able to achieve the second. Their holy land is far off in Arabia or Palestine. Consequently, their names and their outlooks smack of a foreign origin. Their love is divided. So these guys put together their nationalism and their religion in order to create hatred towards others. Didn't you have a president who decided to take a Christian priest to the White House? I do remember something like that. So I say, I'm going to let you speak now, but I feel that Kelley is being very optimistic because we are comparing 8 years to 4 years. And I'm just saying, luckily, we didn't see more of that.
Well, we have to be as optimistic as we can be because this is a terrible situation that we are seeing, or the terrible situation that we're going to. But I also want to key in on, a couple of you have already said it, Holy Land. And this isn't like with Christianity where Jerusalem is the Holy Land or Mecca is a Holy Land. There's just these small little areas that are the Holy Land. For the way that Moody is explaining it and the way that some Hindus feel, all of India is the Holy Land. So like you said, the Taj Mahal, oh, that's a mosque. We got to tear it down. Oh, we need to then get rid of anybody who isn't Hindu because they're on holy land. And that's a lot of land that India is. could you imagine if, Christianity just completely swept America and said, okay, only Christians can be here? It would be absolutely devastating and impossible to enforce, because as much as they are in the in the majority here, the minority is pretty damn big. So I don't know why. Yeah, it's amazing to me that they can just say, okay, all of the land is holy.
Well, it's the gentleman who wrote that book, the Hindutva, or the idea of Hindu-ness, Savarkar, is really using the no true Scotsman fallacy, right? They're saying, though you may reside in India, the fact that you lack the faith means that you're not a true Indian. So, I mean, this quote in itself, or this idea, is fallacious on its face, right? And I just want to make a couple notes here about this idea of preying upon the vulnerable again, just like what we touched on with the recovery programs there. So India is fast tracking citizenship for non-Muslims coming in from places like Pakistan, Afghanistan, and Bangladesh. Now, I don't know if this is going to accomplish what the Indian government is hoping it will. These people who are maybe refugees or emigrating from these other countries as non-Muslims. I mean, Pakistan, Afghanistan, and Bangladesh are majority Muslim countries. And these are not secular countries, right? They do have state-sanctioned religion. And so these people may already be facing actual religious persecution for being non-Muslim in the Muslim countries that they're coming from. So I find it unlikely that these people are going to convert to Hinduism when they receive their Indian citizenship. My favorite part of this story was the following quote here. I guess it wasn't really a quote. It was a thought of, what is going on in the heads of these Hindu nationalists. And I guess the thought really is, okay, what part of our identity are you going to attack today? And it's just cognitive dissonance again, right? They're saying, if we were to flip this around, and instead of the Hindus saying, what part of our identity are you attacking today, by eating meat or something like that? What if it was the beliefs and the actions of Muslims from majority Muslim countries against atheists or other religious beliefs or members of the LGBT community, right? There were attacks of Indian Christians, which is just going to further fuel the global Christian persecution complex. And I question, when are these people going to learn that their love of that they'll love their religion until it contains something that's unpalatable to them, right? When they reach that point, they're going to do one of two things. They're going to defect to a different denomination, or they're going to create their own, which is going to fracture the religions further, and it's going to create fighting, right? We can think about this with Martin Luther and Catholicism and the rise of Protestantism. And, at this point, I'm just so tired of the religions. The article further notes that Hindus question why other faiths don't just conform to their customs. For example, why can't they just live with our rules? Why can't they not eat beef? Why does the azan need to be played in public places? But what if we turn this around? And what if somebody asks Hindus, why can't you just eat beef, right? These people, they'd be apoplectic. And I think about the ramifications for in the US. What happens if you ask a Christian from America to go, live in India and live under those faiths and those customs? They wouldn't do it. They wouldn't be open to it. So why do we always want to live under these religious theocracies, right? It's only good when you're in the majority.
That's another thing that we hear on the shows a lot from theists. Well, what's the harm in just believing? You don't actually have to believe, just believe, which is a fallacy in of itself and makes absolutely no sense to me. Just pay the lip service. Well, wait a minute. If we're paying the lip service it's not genuine, and you go round and round the bend on that one. So yeah, no, just believe. Just don't eat beef. Just don't worry about halal. And no, this is part of the the different cultures. You don't have to understand it. You do have to respect it, though.
Yeah, I find it so contradictory.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's really frustrating.
Kelly?
I don't know what to say. I really honestly don't. I find this really, really depressing in a lot of ways. I didn't know even where to start on this, and I reached out to a friend of mine who lives in India, and unfortunately, he's been an atheist for several years now. He's Brahmin, so he says he doesn't have a really good outlook on the rest of Indian society because he's kind of living in a better position than most people are. But he has said that even his parents, and this is something like we've heard from Americans, have started going, down this path. That and he's losing his parents, and his parents who never used to bother him about being an atheist are now attacking him for it. So it's definitely working. Whatever they're doing over there, what Modi's doing, it's definitely working. So,
well, it's empowering, right? When you start to see people act in this way and you're in that majority, it's the same thing that happened with January 6th, right?
Mm-hmm.
We allowed this kind of conduct to be, I don't want to say okay, but we allowed this to enter sort of polite discourse. And we shouldn't, we should push back on this because we can see that this is the inevitable end of it, right?
The previous administration did not create these thoughts. It just gave it a megaphone.
Oh, of course. Yeah. This was always there. There was the undercurrent. But like I say, when you allow this to go from, the quiet things get said out loud, that's the problem, right? Because then there's this sort of tacit okayness with it. Sorry, I can't think of the right word right now, but
I would like to finish to say the last thing about on my side. I mean, about mentioning that. Yeah, I don't want to finish the show. Mentioning that from my perspective, and this is just me talking about what I see. I find all religions evil and problematic. What is happening in India is what happens when Hindus have the power. Go to Pakistan to see what happens when Muslims are in power. You had 4 years of Trump giving a lot of power to nationalist Christians, and things started getting out of control. Even Buddhism, the most pacific, non-godly religious out there, is being used in China to put Muslims in concentration camps. So this is why we do this activism. This is the reason why I find all religions so dangerous. And I'm pretty sure that you have all heard your nationalists saying, oh yeah, you don't like our country, then leave the country. And they are telling the same to all Muslims and Christians in India. And I just want to finish with this quote from the article saying, as menacing as the persecution of religious minorities has become, for most Indians, emigrating is not an option. Only about 5% of citizens have a passport, and those who leave the country tend to be amongst the wealthiest. If we decide to abandon the ship, what will happen to people who do not have the resources to go out? That is a very big concern. And that is what is going to happen in every single country where religion takes the power. People don't have a way of leaving the country. No money, no passport, no nothing. That's why it's so dangerous when we let religions take over in any country in the world. Those were my
also. Why should they? Yeah. Why should they? That's their home. That's been their home for, if it's as little as a year, if it's as long as 20, 30, 40 years, it's their home. Okay? Regardless of having the resources or not, it's their damn home.
Yeah. But again, if you allow this to continue, there's been rifts and schisms in the past within religious communities, right? So though you may be in the majority now, I think about a lot of the Christian religions, right? Catholicism has become more lenient of the LGBT community, right? Not officially sanctioning marriage, but saying that you may exist, you just aren't supposed to practice. You aren't supposed to act on it, right? But they are allowing the fact that, sorry?
It's like, oh, fucking thanks. They get to allow to exist.
Right. Yeah. But I mean, that's the thing, right? Like, what happens if you find yourself in a faction where you don't feel like these people should even exist? What if you find them an abomination, right? There's going to be a schism. There's going to be a rift in this religion. So even though you may be in the religious majority now, what happens if the head of your religion decides something that you don't agree with, or you don't read your religion, your text, however, the same way, right? Then
we're seeing that in Catholicism.
Sorry?
We're seeing that in Catholicism right now, where the Pope is becoming, the Pope is trying to become a little bit more progressive in a getting dragged, kicking, and screaming kind of way. And there are a lot of people who are saying, oh, I don't like that.
Well, and that already happened with Martin Luther with Catholicism, right? And it already fractured. So you may be in that majority now, and if you make your state a theocratic state, what happens when they make a law that you don't agree with? Then suddenly you're not in the majority anymore.
And you become an enemy of the state.
Yep.
So I think that's a good point where we can put a pin in that, because again, that's very, very heavy, and I still want to get a little bit of optimism in the end, but let's go ahead and move on to our final segment. But before we do that, just want to let you know that you can become a member of the channel for as little as 99 cents a month. If you click the join button down below the video, it'll give you a special, or give you access even to special chat emojis. We don't really do slow mode for the premiere, but it does make you immune to that. Also, want to let you know that we have a brand new store. You can visit tiny.cc/merchaca to get your favorite items like t-shirts, hoodies, coffee mugs, and you can check out our new items like beanies, phone cases, and tote bags. All your ACA shows feature a special limited edition item each month. So be sure to check out our store for NP merch and merch from all the other shows. So for the final segment, we're going to actually maybe help out a theist argument, a theist talking point. Has evolution changed? Teo, what is this all about?
Oh, yes. This article, this thing that we're going to be talking about, actually, this is from the Templeton Foundation. So you might think, oh, maybe they are trying to go, somewhere with this. So what is this article about? This article from Only Sky Media, it's quite nice. It starts by explaining that evolution is, as most of us know, just the selection of beings that survive enough to pass their genes. The ones with detrimental characteristics die, and the ones that adapt better to the environment succeed. However, in the second part, it talks about Lamarckism. If you don't know or don't remember about Lamarckism, it's the guy with the giraffes. The giraffes with longer neck, they're going to survive. The other ones are going to die, and that is one of the first explanations for evolution that there was out there. And quoting the article, it says, recently, there have been areas that look similar to Lamarckism, such as epigenetics. Rather than passing on altered genes across generations, epigenetics looks at how other hereditary elements can be passed on, such as when proteins are released in gene regulation. However, I have to mention, because I have talked about this before and about a similar article, that it's very important to remember. Lamarck created he formulated his hypothesis based on observations from the time. And back at the time, we had no idea what genes were, and there was no way to investigate them. So saying that epigenetics is similar to Lamarckism because it's talk about similar observations could be like saying that the geocentrical model is similar to the current heliocentric model because they are based on the observations that the sun moves through the sky, apparently, for us. So there is not that much, and it's not. I would not call this the return of Lamarckism, but well, that is the personal thing that I want to mention about. And this is mostly talking about how to call it, how the random process is not as random as we thought, and genes have certain bias to pass specific genes rather than other ones. There is a lot to talk about, but I want to hear you guys talking about this. And yeah, there is a lot that I want to talk about. This is exciting for me. So Rex, what do you think about this? I like your name.
Sorry, I just want to say that I think it's an excellent article. An excellent article that demonstrates the scientific method in action. So we have evidence of a phenomenon that is challenging our current best understanding of the framework for the model of evolution. So under science, instead of throwing this out as a religion would do, we consider that the model may be wrong or may be incomplete. Okay, so I want to emphasize something that the author writes here. I'm not talking about agency here, and certainly not God. I think this is an important note, because if this were a God, a great question that we could ask would be, why are they allowing for the de novo emergence at rates higher in a given geographical region and not others? Or why not just allow for the emergence of a single allele of one of these genes and get the protective effects from malaria, and not allow the duplicate allele, which results in sickle cell anemia?
Yeah. So again, yeah, this isn't, we're not going back to the 1800s, where we didn't have the technology, but it is taking a look at things more critically, because the current best model is, the theory of evolution by means of natural selection. And a lot of people kind of get that confused, like, what does really any of that mean? It's just a bunch of words. Oh, theory, that means it's not proven. No, theories are testable. They are proven. They don't call them laws because there are certain things that we don't necessarily know, and you cannot know all those things. And so the theory of evolution by means of natural selection, is that the end all be all? Science even says no. Science even says no. For all the missing pieces that they're still looking for, where abiogenesis, which we have become, much closer into figuring out, and then, like you said, with the allele frequencies changing, we've got a lot of the pieces. We just need to kind of like, okay, where are these missing components? And that's all you need. More science is going to figure that one out. Kelly, what do you think?
Well, I don't want to.
Since we all evolved from your favorite rocks,
I just want to point out that Lamarck just might have been lucky and guessed that evolution could happen from generation to generation, which is what we're seeing with epigenetics, and which is why we think we were looking back at Lamarckism. But he also believed a lot of other weird things. Like, he totally disavowed modern chemistry and still believed that we worked on earth, air, fire, and water were the four elements. So that's a big reason. A lot of his stuff was really not very scientific. And it's one of the reasons that we don't really put too much stock in him. We kind of just gave him a pass in history. I know another thing he believed in was perpetual spontaneous generation of microorganisms from chemical sources. So he really had the idea that microorganisms were just generating spontaneously from the earth all the time. And we know almost everything he thought was wrong. And if you throw enough darts at the wall, you're going to hit a bullseye once in a while. And I feel like that's what's happened with Lamarck, right?
I mean, yeah, he just used some observations to talk about certain specific changes. And sorry, Jason, I'm pretty sure that theory is the explanation of something, a phenomenon that we see, and the law is the mathematical equation that we use to get some calculus. That's why theories are not called law. They are like two different things. Okay, so I feel that I failed to mention what the study was about. It's about hemoglobin mutation, which protects against malaria, this is more common in African populations than in European populations. But I want to quote the final words from the abstract that the article links. Further studies will be needed to examine mutation rates. So always this ends in further studies, and it's been only 2 studies. And it's not, another thing that the article emphasizes a lot is we hypothesize that evolution is influenced by 2 sources of information: external information, that is natural selection, and internal information that is accumulated with the genome through the generations and impacts the origin of mutations. So this is just saying, it's just adding an extra layer to what we already know, how genes are going to be changing. And here we just learned that there is this small bias. And there have been previous studies that, for example, if you have a mother who has in her genome, darker skin ancestors, and she's living in a cold place like the Antarctic, well, the children are going to be whiter, quotation mark, than if she goes to Africa and is under a lot of sun, because during the time that she's pregnant, the body kind of prepares the baby for the type of life that is going to be coming outside. So this is just some additional information to stuff that has been studied already, and we kind of already know. And to all the believers out there who hate evolution so much, if atheists don't know why, it's because evolution proves that we don't come from a specific couple, therefore no original sin, therefore no need for Jesus. And that's why religion hates evolution, despite this being a proven fact.
Yeah, so I think maybe I just want to explain a little bit of what's going on in the article here. So Teo's right, we're talking about a gene dealing with the hemoglobin. What we're talking about here is we're comparing 2 populations, two geographical regions. So we looked at individuals in sub-Saharan Africa and I think it was individuals in Europe. And we were comparing these 2 populations. And when they say de novo emergence, what they mean is that basically this gene is not inherited from the parents, right? So neither of the parents have this gene where they have this malaria protection from this mutation in the hemoglobin. And what they did was they looked at the children of the parents, right? So we wouldn't expect the child to have this protective effect, right? Because neither of the parents do. So if this gene were to be inherited, you would expect it to come from one of the parents, right? In this case, it's not happening. It's happening randomly, or de novo means new, right? So this is essentially this random mutation. So the current model of evolution would suggest that we would expect this random mutation, this new gene, to present at rates similar from both geographic regions, right? But that's not what we're seeing here. We're seeing that the children in the sub-Saharan African regions are being born with this gene more frequently from parents who don't carry the gene than from children who are born in the European regions, right? So something is happening here where at statistically significant rates, these children are being born with protective effects at rates greater than they're seen in other regions where malaria is either not a concern or not as much of a concern. So something is happening here that is pressuring this in a way that we wouldn't expect. So yeah, I don't know if that helps maybe our viewers understand a little bit of what's happening in the article a little bit more, but I just wanted to provide that context.
I mean, possibly the prevalence of malaria carrying insects could potentially be causing that. You know, if you have an area that, you know, I was going to say needs that adaptation, but needs is a very, very loaded word on that one.
So that's exactly the problem, Jason, is the parents don't have the protective effect. You're correct that the risk is there, but the parents don't have the protective effect. So why are the children being born with this mutation that provides them with the protective benefits at rates higher than regions where the risk is not there, right? So you're correct that it's happening. You're correct that the risk is there. But the question is, why are these rates higher in Africa than elsewhere? And that's the thing that we don't understand.
And that's science.
Exactly. So
yeah,
that's
which is awesome.
Exactly.
Right?
So
And
that's
we
what
answer
we're trying to
one
figure out.
question and we get 10 more. That's so awesome. And that's one of the things I really liked about this article. It showed how much we don't know, how much we still need to know, and how much work we have before we really fully understand this. It's sort of like watching science happening in action. It's great.
And that's why I wanted to bring up this idea of the scientific method, right? Instead of just throwing this out and saying that it's not relevant because it flies in the face of what we currently understand from our natural selection model, which is random mutations over time, right? This seems to be non-random. And so instead of throwing this out, we're trying to find a way to incorporate it into the model or to explain the reason why it's happening.
Yeah, you don't need to have all the pieces because you're still looking for the pieces. You're still absolutely looking for the pieces. And yeah, Lamarck, like you said, had a lot of really weird and wacky ideas. Darwin had a lot of weird and wacky ideas, and that has been brought up time and time again. Like, oh, well, he married his cousin. It was practiced at the time. There was let's not do the cousin thing, please. Just because a certain idea, is doesn't quite work out and you can't discount every single thing. You look at quantum physics. I am still convinced. I don't know that this is true, but I am convinced that when it comes to string theory, a bunch of quantum physicists, took a lot of drugs, looked down at their shoes, and was like, string theory. Is that true? Probably not, but I'm convinced it's true.
So what you're saying, Jason, is you have faith.
I
kid.
Checkmate atheist. Kelley, or Teo, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I just want to really quickly say that this is something that I had to learn when I stopped being a believer, and it helped me a lot. And it's what I love about science the most, that it's okay to be wrong. It's okay to make mistakes, and we learn from those mistakes. And learning that it's okay not to know everything and to make mistakes feels amazing. It's what I love the most about being an atheist, and why I love science so much.
Yeah, it's one of the things I love about science too, is everything that's happening new. I'm a geologist, and one of our major concepts was actually discovered in my lifetime. We built a whole science on something that just happened within my lifetime, plate tectonics. So I love to see these big changes happening and knowing that we're going to a better, brighter future for this science because of it.
We got to see Pluto go from being a planet to not being a planet before it even orbited the sun. How's that work? Well, science.
And with Kelley here, shout out to Nicholas Steno in the 600s, who became the father of geology.
I would say he was the father of mineralogy. The father of geology was probably James Hutton.
Oh, I thought it was
Sorry.
the one with the mineralization process, but you know your stuff, man.
Cool.
I think Jason and I are both just sort of tapping out of this conversation.
Time bit.
It's out of my wheelhouse.
Yeah, a couple of wheelhouses I'm good in. Geology, I plant my feet on the ground. That's about as much geology as I know.
Yeah.
Steno's work definitely advanced the idea that the Earth was made out of a set number of minerals, and he actually described the fact that one mineral would always have the same geometric patterns, the same angles on the crystals. So he was the one who first realized that there was different minerals. And then Hutton was the guy who started doing stratification and the idea that what is happening on the Earth today has been happening on the Earth all along. So he was the one that really laid down the geological principles.
And the thing about Rex
Sorry,
and
I'm geeking out on geology.
Oh no. That's actually a really great example here, because Rex and I we're kind of like tapped out of the specifics of this conversation, but we know that you have done the study, you have done the work, and so we know, yes, we're not going to take your word as the end all be all, but we do know that when talking with you, when talking about geology, that we have good confidence in what you are telling us is in fact true.
I brought this up in the last episode. Actually, Kelly and I were on the last episode together. And one of my closing thoughts was having deference to experts. When you don't know, that's not a fault. And it's okay to defer to those who are experts in the field. So, yeah. And in this case, dealing with the Only Sky article, these people are evolutionary biologists and they're studying this. And in the same way that Lamarck was wrong at the time, but may have had some good ideas, we're refining these, right? Darwin wasn't right about everything.
Nope.
We understand his model better now than we did then. And the model that we previously had, now we're seeing that there are some faults in it. And that's okay. That's the constant pursuit of knowledge. So yeah, it's absolutely not a fault. And these questions are just a pathway to new answers.
Yeah, would Darwin's theory be a whole lot better if he had electron microscopes? Unfortunately, we'll never know. Right. But what we do know is that the groundwork was laid, and we get to build off of those foundations. Mm-hmm. And the only thing that refutes science is more science.
More science.
And never religion.
Amen, brother.
So I think we've had a really good discussion, but we are coming close to the end of the show. So let's go ahead and give our final thoughts. And I started from my immediate left. Let's go ahead and start from our far left. Kelly?
Thanks for having me. I always enjoy being here. I'd love to come back. Yeah, thanks, Jason. Thanks, Teo. It's good to see you again too, Rex.
Absolutely. I think we might have you back again.
Thanks. I enjoy being here. I really love doing this. It's awesome.
And we enjoy having you. Teo, what have you got?
Well, just say that, as we mentioned, science is amazing because of that. Science keep refuting science. Science keep improving science. Let's remember that evolution is not something that, Darwin came up with it. No, Lamarck, Alexander 2,600 years ago, Linnaeus, Steno, as we mentioned, even Lamarck, all of them were laying the path for Darwin and Wallace. Please, let's not forget about Wallace. Both of those guys developed this theory of evolution thanks to the ideas of previous scientists who had been working on this, analyzing fossils from 2,600 years ago. I mean, that's when Alexander started analyzing fossils. And during all this time, it's not that Darwin magically created this. It's something that we have been learning. Darwin took some knowledge from Wallace, and that's why nowadays theory is called Darwin-Wallace theory of evolution. And we have learned a lot of stuff. Embryology has shown a lot of things that Darwin had no idea of knowing back at the time. And this keeps evolving. Get it? Evolving. And it's amazing. And we love science because of that, because this is not that it's one guy who had a crazy idea, who smoked a joint and said, "Ooh, evolution, we are all fish." No, this is something that has been studied over and over, and we have gone through a lot. And learning and understanding about this is something that, for me, is extremely exciting. I'm passionate about this, and I love it. So thank you for letting me speak about it, Jason. And just like Kelly, I love being here. So thanks for that as well.
And always thanks for coming in. You're here more than anyone else.
Ooh,
well,
I hope that's true next year too.
I think Cynthia might have you beat on appearances, but you definitely are catching up if you haven't passed already.
It's because
Cynthia,
he's the best looking host.
He's definitely the best drawn host.
Oh yeah, baby. I love that.
And Rex, this has been your second time. Give us your final thoughts.
Well, I just want to make a quick note about Teo. He never ages. That was a joke we made in the notes before we got started. I hate to bring the episode down on a low note. Jason, maybe you can bring it up at the end, but I just want to say that I'm broadcasting here from Canada, and the Pope has scheduled a visit to come to Canada to deal with the residential school system. I don't know if anybody is aware, but there was there used to be what were called residential schools in Canada, where the Indigenous population, the kids of the Indigenous parents were brought to these schools, and they were stripped of their practices, stripped of their faith, their language. So when we talk about religious violence, like the Hindu nationalists in India, this is something that happened in Canada. We tried to strip away the culture and the lives from the Indigenous population here in Canada. So the Pope is got a visit scheduled to Canada, and I can only hope that there will be a true apology, because up until now, the Catholic Church's stance has just been a non-apology. It has been that they are sorry that this happened, but not that they are sorry that they did it. Every other head of a religious institution that had any part of this, so the Anglican Church in the UK, the Protestant Church, the heads of these churches have come out with real, actual apologies for taking part in the atrocity. And I really hope, but I'm not terribly optimistic that the Pope is going to make amends. I think he's going to come around and do his tour and, like I say, make his non-apologies. So yeah, those are sort of my closing thoughts. But again, thanks for having me on, and I hope I can come back and maybe be a little bit more positive and optimistic.
I would be remiss if I didn't mention that we are now learning that the same thing was going on here in the USA at state-run schools. It's starting to break out into the news just now. So
okay.
I feel for you guys up there too, though. So I don't want to make light of what happened there, believe me. But I just to say that we did it here, and it happened through state-run schools.
Right.
I thought I was the depressive cartoon. Sorry, Jason.
I told you I was the bummer this episode.
Well, and we actually did cover the Pope Apology Tour in a previous episode of the Nonprofits, and so this is definitely something that we, are constantly watching. And by the time this airs, the Apology Tour will have already concluded, most likely.
Right. Okay.
So I'm sure that if we haven't talked about it, what happened in the Apology Tour up to this point, we'll probably talk about it later. As for, I just want to say that, we're going to do our final announcements, and I'll give my last little bit, but go ahead and you can join our fan social media outlets. You can check out the Nonprofits on the Fan Run Facebook page by going to tiny.cc/FBNP. Especially check it out, like I said, on Fridays, as we post the articles and show in advance, so you can come to the premiere all prepared for the discussion. If you would like to support the show, you can do so by becoming a patron at tiny.cc/PatreonNP. If you find yourself already shopping at Amazon, support the atheist community of Austin by shopping at smile.amazon.com and selecting Atheist Community of Austin as the beneficiary. Be sure to use that link to help out the ACA. We appreciate it. And we do value your feedback. Tell us what you like, what you don't like in the comments, or in the email us at nonprofits@atheist-community.org. We actually had some kind of negative comments earlier, and I think we addressed them fairly well. But even those negative comments, it's engagement. And we do appreciate all the good comments and all the negative comments. And as far as my final thoughts, I really want to quote a famous chemist who said, "Science, bitches." Anyways,
Bill.
Thank you all for watching and listening, and we will see you next week.
Watch Talk Heathen live Sundays at 1 p.m. Central. Visit tiny.cc/YTTH and call into the show at 512-991-9242 or connect to the show online at tiny.cc/callth.